discuss that really quick. What's the difference between Hebrews, Jews, and Israelites? There's this lump thing that we do. Hebrew has to do with the Hebrew letters. Hebrew is only through the Torah, first of all. Israel is the 231 gates, Aleph with every letter of Aleph. Yehuda is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Moshe was originally the teacher of all other prophets. Okay? He had the mixed multitude with him. These are your people, Moshe. Remember all of the Egyptians that left with the Jewish people? Because he wanted to rectify the mixed multitude. He wanted to rectify the mixed multitude. But without the holy Hebrew letters and without following the Torah, that's impossible. And in the same likeness, it was premature. This is an astonishing thing because it isn't until day 6 that 2. So anyway, so the reappearance of Moshe, we know that he gilgles. We know that he gilgles into the leadership. And this is this is connecting all these together in Vayetikanan by now. So hopefully we're really stacked here as we read. This means that Moshe was originally the teacher of all other prophets. And I would say that being prophet, person to communicate God's message, there's somebody in all of the tribes that disseminates. Moshe handled all of it. He covered everybody, everything. They're all included. As in Israel. Israel is all of the progenitor of the 12 tribes. And then they each have their expansions, like hair, as it were. Moshe, being the first prophet to communicate, was a prototype for all subsequent prophets and leaders of the Jewish people. Jewish people. Now we're down to Yehuda. Hold on a minute. So they would all learn from him and aspire to his level. But when he pleaded to enter the promised land with the rest of the Jewish people, now this term, Jewish, is loosely termed because remember, there's the mixed multitude mixed within. And we don't want to confuse this thing, but genuinely, the Holy Land, Jewish people, in order to continue to shepherd them. God, in a way, did answer his prayer by assuring him that his soul would return and be vested in the soul of each generation's leader. In these cases, however, he would not initially be the teacher, but the student. But afterwards, in example, when Moshe's soul would return in every generation, he, in the form of that generation's next leader, would need a teacher to teach him, in particular the prophet Eliyahu, who would come and teach him. And the generation will then begin to shine within him. Moshe's soul, impregnated in each new generation's up-and-coming leader, must begin from scratch and learn the Torah from others. One of the missions of the prophet Eliyahu, that's Elijah, who ascended alive into heaven and became a type of angel. The prophet Eliyahu, who ascended alive into heaven and became a type of angel, is to teach the secrets of the Torah to those scholars in every generation who are worthy of this. Once an individual begins to learn the inner dimensions of the Torah, he begins to identify with the unique psychosocial context of his generation and thus develops his innate leadership qualities. At first, he will be, quote, dumb, not knowing how to open his mouth, Psalms 38:14. In fact, we see that even then, in example, Moshe's own lifetime, something of this promise was fulfilled. Our sages state in Sota and Rashi on Deuteronomy, in reference to the verse, I can no longer come and go, that it refers to Torah study, bless you, meaning that the fountains of wisdom had closed up for him, and he needed to learn Torah from Yehoshua. On the day of his death, Moshe told the people, I am 120 years old today. I can no longer come and go. God told me, you shall not cross the Jordan River, this Jordan River. God will go before you, in example, the Jewish people, He will annihilate these nations before you and drive them out. Yehoshua will lead you as God has said. Deuteronomy 31. This is an additional meaning of the words, you have a teacher, an example that you already have a teacher, namely Yehoshua. Thus, these words spoken on the first of Shevat in the last years of Moshe's life look ahead 37 days to the 7th of Adar, the last day of his life, when the divine inspiration necessary to teach the Torah to the Jewish people would be transferred from him to Yehoshua. This, of course, in addition to their promise that Moshe's soul would return to lead the Jewish people in each generation, and in doing so would need to be taught first by another teacher. This is alluded to in the verse, I will raise a prophet like you from them. Sorry, I will raise a prophet like you for them from amongst their brethren. Yibit 18:18. The initials of the words for I will raise for them from amongst spell the word for dumb. I will raise from them for them from amongst. Akim, Lachem, Mikarev is the three initials are Aleph, Lamed, Mem, which is Alam, Elam, the word for dumb. The passage from which this verse is taken states that the Jewish people will never have to guess what God's will is for them, unlike other nations that need to resort to divinations and soothsayers. There will always be prophetic leaders who are mystically understood to be impregnated with Moshe's soul, who will convey God's will to the Jewish people. Okay? All right, again, the passage from which this verse is taken is that the Jewish people will never have to guess what God's will is for them, unlike other nations that need to resort to divination and soothsayers. Soothsayers, I love it. There will always be prophetic leaders who are mystically understood to be impregnated with Moshe's soul, who will convey God's will to the Jewish people. The full verse quoted here reads, I will raise a prophet like you for them from amongst their brethren, and I will place my words in his mouth, and he will tell them all that I command him. After the new leader has passed through the learning stage, I will place my words in his mouth, meaning that God's words will flow from within him. After this, he will ascend to the next higher level, and he will tell them that I commanded him, meaning that God will speak to him openly. The Arizal now finds allusion to the process in the verse, I became dumb, silent, I was quiet of good, and my hurt intensified. Psalms 39:3. This is the mystical meaning of the verse, I became dumb. Silent, the word for silent, domya, can be read as if to mean silenced by God. Domya, meaning he decreed that I should be dumb. Domya. Dalet vav mem yad hey can be split into two words, silent, dom, dalet vav mem, and the divine name yad hey. Dom's also blood. I was quiet of good means I did not teach Torah, for there is no good but Torah. Avodah Zarah 19b. The sages state that the word good, wherever it appears in the Bible, refers to the Torah, the ultimate good. Wherever good, Tob, appears in the Bible, it refers to the Torah, the ultimate good. My hurt intensified refers to the suffering that he will endure. To explain this, the Arizal turns to the sage's explanation of the verse, behold, my servant will prosper, he will ascend, be lifted up, and be very high. Just as many were astonished over you, saying, he looks too disfigured to be human, so will the many nations exclaim about him. Yeshayahu 52:13-15. This implies that the Redeemer's, or Israel's, or Moshe's, as we'll see, exalted state after the redemption will be commensurate with their dejection during the exile. Forgive me.
Wow.
Woo! Okay. Thank you. As it's stated in the Talmud 36, Berachot 5a, Moshe will first be desolate. The name Moshe may be permitted to spell the word for desolate, Shin Memhe, Shemeh. In Hebrew, the words for desolation and astonishment are related, since desolation astonishes the beholder and astonishment puts the person undergoing it in a state of temporary, quote, desolation. An example, incapacitation. Thus the phrase, just as many were astonished, shamemu, over you, in the verse quoted above, describes Moshe's initial pre-grandeur state. only afterwards, my servant will prosper. This refers to Moshe, since God elsewhere calls Moshe my servant. Numbers, Yehoshua, 2 Kings, Malachi. This prophecy also refers to the Messiah. This is not a contradiction, since the numerical value of Shiloh is the same as that of Moshe, 345. Shiloh was the town where Yehoshua put the tabernacle, its first location in the Promised Land. Later, in the days of Shemuel, it moved to Nob and later Gibeon. It remained there until King Shalamah built the first temple. Being the first resting place of the house of God when the Jews entered the Promised Land, it represents the idea of the return of the people to their land with the messianic redemption. Furthermore, our sages stated that whatever pertains to the first Redeemer, in example Moshe, pertains to the final Redeemer, in example the Messiah, that Midbar Rabbah and Kohelet Rabbah. And that generation that passes away is the same as the generation that is to come to be resurrected. Kohelet Rabbah. The second statement means that if a person dies lame, he will be resurrected lame. If he dies blind, he will be resurrected blind. This is so people won't say that those that God let die are different from those he resurrected. I will raise them with their defects, and then I will heal them. If those two statements of our sages indicate that the verse quoted, behold, my servant will prosper, can apply equally to Moshe and to the final Redeemer. This is also the meaning of the verse, as in the days when you went out of Egypt, I will show him wonders. Ibid. Oh, that's Mecca, 7:15. We would have expected this verse to read, I will show you wonders, and as in the days when he went out of Egypt. In this case, the verse would read, as in the days when he, Moshe, or the generation of Exodus, went out of Egypt, I will show you, the Messiah, or the generation of the final redemption, wonders. The verse instead indicates that you indicate example, the final generation, yourself went out of Egypt, and that you yourself are that generation which God will now show new wonders. Thus the verse, behold, my servant will prosper, can again apply equally to Moshe and to the final Redeemer. Oh, I mean, you guys, did you think that you escaped 6,000 years ago, that you're not in Egypt now needing a Redeemer to drag you out? This is crazy cool. It's actually happening right now. Like the tables have turned. It's not a timetable, oh, look back to that old thing. It's happening right now. Right now. The verse, behold, my servant will prosper, describes the ascent the Redeemer will undergo. At first he will prosper, then he will ascend. Then he will be lifted up. Then he will be high. Then very much so. The two words for and be very high, begaba me'od, are taken to refer to two separate stages. The word for very much so, me'od, is a permutation of the name Adam, indicating that the Messiah will be on the spiritual level that Adam was before the primordial sin. That's the angel of death. Ma'ad. He will then rectify everything that was flawed by the primordial sin, and thus the final action will restore reality to the way it was first intended. This phrase comes from the Lekadodi poem that describes the Shabbat, the last day created, but the first thought of. Since it embodies the perfection of reality, the preceding days lead up to. On the cosmic scale, the phrase means that the final action, the redemption, will bring the world to its originally intended state. This is the highest level. The following verse informs us what will happen in the intervening generations, in order that we realize that it is worth ascending all those levels. It therefore states in the following verse, just as many were astonished over you, saying, his appearance is too disfigured to be that of a man. The words a man refer to Moshe, for Moshe is on occasion referred to as this man Moshe, or the man Moshe. Exodus, Numbers, which is an unusual idiom in the Bible. His appearance refers to Moshe, unique appearance, namely the fact that his face shone. Exodus 34:29. But in subsequent generations, when Moshe reappears initially as a regular person, his condition is described in the following verses. Following is a complete passage. We have printed in bold the verses the Arizal addresses specifically. Just a moment, please. Behold, my servant shall prosper, ascend, and be lifted, and be very high. Just as the many were appalled at him, so marred was his appearance, unlike that of a man, his form beyond human semblance. Just so he shall startle many nations. Kings shall be silenced because of him, for they shall see what has not been told them, shall behold what they never have heard. Who would believe what we have heard? Upon whom has the arm of God been revealed? For he has grown by his favor like a tree crown, like a tree trunk out of arid ground. He had no form or beauty that we should look at him, no charm that we should find him pleasing. He was despised, shunned by men, a man of suffering, familiar with disease. As one who hid his face from us, he was despised. We held him of no account. Yet it was our sickness that he was bearing, our suffering that he endured. We accounted him a plague, smitten and afflicted by God. But he was wounded because of our sins, crushed because of our iniquities. He bore the chastisement that made us whole. By his bruises we were healed. We all went astray like sheep, each going his own way, and God visited upon him the guilt of us all. He was maltreated, yet he was submissive. He did not open his mouth, like a sheep being led to slaughter, like an ewe, dumb before those who shear her. He did not open his mouth. By oppressive judgment, he was taken away. Who could describe his abode? For he was cut off from the land of the living. Through the sin of my people, who deserved the punishment? And his grave was set among the wicked, and with the rich in his death, though he had done no injustice, and had spoken no falsehood. But God chose to crush him by disease, so that if he made himself an offering for guilt, he might see offspring and have long life, and that through him God's purpose might prosper. Out of his anguish he shall see it. He shall enjoy it to the full through his devotion. My righteous servant makes the many righteous. It is their punishment that he bears. Assuredly, I will give him the many as his portion. He shall receive the multitude as his spoil, whereas he bore the guilt of the many and made intercession for sinners. Isaiah 52, 13 through 53, 12. Translation adapted from the Tanakh. Who could bear such a statement? Thus, who would believe what we have heard? Upon whom has the arm of God been revealed? This evidently refers to the revelation of God's arm upon Moshe, as it's written, and for all the strong arm and awesome power that Moshe demonstrated before all of Israel, Deuteronomy. And his grave was set amongst the wicked. Allegorically, this means that Moshe's soul descended to be impregnated into the bodies of individuals in these later generations who, no matter how righteous, are considered wicked relative to him. Therefore, I will give him the many as his portion, meaning that he will receive the reward for leading all of these generations, since he brought all these generations to merit. We know that Moshe's merits weigh as much as those as the rest of Israel. Midrash Tankanim, Beshalach. And as our sages say, Moshe attained merit and brought all Israel to merit. Therefore, the merits of the many are accounted as his. They're his. He shall receive the multitude as his spoil. Means that he received his portion directly from God, while the other righteous people will receive theirs indirectly through him. This is because he exposed himself to death in each generation. This is the mystical meaning of why, in the repetition of his name, it is written, Moshe, Moshe, Exodus. See Zohar. Without a dividing punctuation mark indicating that in each generation he himself appears. He himself appears. When God called to Abraham to sacrifice Yitzchak, he also repeated his name. That's in Genesis 22:11, but there is a cantillation mark telling the reader to pause between the two times his name is mentioned. The same is true when God called to Jacob before he went to Egypt. Ibid 46. The fact that Moshe's name is repeated without any intervening punctuation indicates that the two appearances of Moshe as himself and impregnated into the leader of each generation are the same. And he was numbered among the sinners, and he bore the guilt of the many, means that through his final reappearance as the Messiah, he will achieve complete forgiveness for the sins of the generations, including the sin of Adam and Eve, who were many and great. Gadolim. Amen. Into the reading. Tomorrow's chapter 5. Forgetfulness. What a suiting reading. Thoughts or questions? Well, thank you all for joining me to study. Glory to Hashem. Thank you, Yer, for making a way, and I'll see you at Zohar.